An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 70. Kidnapped. I am sorry, brother, Lancel stated at the entranceway to the king's private chambers. His most holy majesty has requested privacy as he reflects in prayer and meditation before the Seven. The former heir to the secondary branch of House Lannister had completely disappeared and was replaced by this pious zealot. Not that his former self was ever anything to marvel at. You may not enter. Jaime did his best not to slug Lancel in the jaw, what he had been wanting to do ever since the boy was out of diapers. The news had arrived the night before, and the small council had debated without sleep on how to tell Joffrey. No one felt comfortable prepping anything in regards to the city's defences without his authorization. Damn this entire city. We have to speak with his most holy majesty. Littlefinger drawled obsequiously. I do not know what that says. Ever the politician. Matters of import require it. A smirk appeared on Lancel's face. The little bitch is enjoying this. You know the protocol dictates he must not be disturbed. For fuck's sake! With a shove of the arm, Jaime shoved Lancel to the ground and stormed into the room while the guards stood shock still, likely enjoying how the fallen highborn fell. Littlefinger behind him, they came upon the figure of King Joffrey, first of his name. The servants, Sir Gregor and Dontos, were against the wall, just standing there. He was alone, quiet. It was disconcerting. Your highest. Littlefinger and Jaime fell to their knees. We bring news of the battlefield. Only now, noticing that anyone had entered his room, Joffrey turned. Ah! Uncle! Tell me of our glorious victory. There is no more army. Blinking up, Joffrey turned to look at his uncle and adviser. What did you say? Repeat it back to me. His voice was a deathly calm, missing the sadistic, mocking edge of his normal tone. It made Jaime and Littlefinger nervous, and terrified the shaking Sir Dontos and the blind servant girls. Whenever the Chimera was in this manner, then only pain followed. Jaime gulped, trying to keep the anguish from his voice. In spite of Tywin's growing bitterness and paranoia, he was still Joffrey's father. He did not wish him pain or humiliation upon him, no matter how necessary Jon Snow's victory was to the survival of the realm. But one must never show emotion in front of the king. It never ended well. It only gave Joffrey more of an opportunity to torture. The army of the divine Chimera has been annihilated in front of Highgarden. Littlefinger calmed himself, hoping that Joffrey's anger would be directed at his uncle. Due to his lack of consultation with your genius, Tywin allowed his army to be defeated and was himself captured. I advise that we prepare the city for a siege. Silence hung over the king's chambers, all present waiting for Joffrey's reaction. When it happened, it stunned them. Throwing back his head, Joffrey dissolved into a malevolent laugh, cackling towards the ceiling as if in privy to the world's greatest secret. One no one else but him was aware of. Finally, as the giggles died down, he cocked his head at the two. Do not worry. There will be no siege. Jon Snow will come crawling to the capital on his hands and knees, unarmed and ready to submit to me. Confused, Jaime lifted his head, although quickly covering it with his good hand. Please share your illustrious plans to keep the dragons from burning us to the ground. The tone was quite patronizing, but he knew that his son/nephew well enough. The insult would go over his head. Because, dearest uncle, Joffrey grinned, because if he doesn't, he will lose the ones he cares the most about. Another set of giggles. He will? The ones I will soon have in my hands. His bitch sister and the dragon whore. Cowering in the corner, a single servant girl's unseeing eyes flew open in shock, then narrowed in quiet contemplation. Line break. The hiss crack of the hand cannons piercing the din, instant streaks of yellow-white flame lancing out from the barrels in the night air. After a moment of silence, a raucous cheer rang out of the entire Imperial camp outside of Highgarden, cups of wine and ale smacking together as the fiddles and pipes started up again. Everyone among the Imperial army, not passed out upon the ground in exhaustion, were engulfed in an almost manic merriment, celebrating the most decisive victory seen on the continent of Westeros since Aegon's conquest. Though it had been nearly 36 hours since the battle had been fought, and the stench of death and smoke hadn't dissipated at all, it still lingered from the burning husks of men, material, and buildings to the piles of corpses in the mass graves marred the once beautiful landscape. The stocks of lime needed to douse the stench and rot were not nearly enough. Only the chilly wind provided any source of relief. At least the sappers had placed the graves downwind of the castle town and central camp. Highgarden was sure to go down in the histories as a fitting conclusion to the era of tumult that had gripped Westeros since the death of Jon Arryn. Nearly 150,000 had clashed against each other, soldiers of all houses, regions, and nationalities in each of the armies. The Targaryen Empire rallied Northerners, Dornish, Dothraki, and Giscari among their banners, while the army of the Divine Chimera included Westerlanders, Reachetes, Essosi pirates, and Braavosi within their formations. A veritable melting pot, fueled but with the blood of tens of thousands, with over 4,000 Imperial dead, with triple that wounded. The Lannisters suffered far greater, with 8,000 dead and double that wounded, along with the Emperor Jon and the Empress Daenerys capturing the entire remainder along with their equipment. Certain, they hoped, to serve the fight against the dead. But none of this discounted the sheer celebratory mood among the victors. Years of war. Years of famine, setbacks, massacres, tyranny, and occupation all evaporated in an instant. Reunions between Imperial stalwarts and the mutinying Stormlanders, sellswords and Dornish were warming and inviting, many seen getting roaring drunk with those they would have charged out with ferocity only 48 hours before. Captured stores of rockets were fired into the air along with the hand cannons in joy, joined by booms of cannon heralding the further 1,000 years of Targaryen Stark dynasty. Even the prisoners, housed in the pens, got in on the festivities. Tyrion and Davos ensured they would get hearty meals and ale, rations far better than the best given to them under Joffrey's banner. Among the command tent, the relief was palpable. Many had worried that if they would survive the battle, and being met with all of their friends and family alive, if wounded in some cases, there was something to raise to the heavens in joyous celebration. The remaining stores of fine arbor gold were cracked into, wine flowing and toasts raised to the health of the imperial couple. Eventually, as inebriation took over, people began to break off towards chambers or rooms, some drunken to collapse into beds, others in pairs to fall into bed for other purposes. All unaware of a trickle of shadowy figures, melting through the doorways and alleys, thanks to the fervour of victory clouding their normal watchfulness, their targets dwelling within, unknowing of the Chimera's final contingency playing out before them. Torches flickering, shadows dancing along the whitewashed stone walls of the airy hallways, Podrick Payne could feel an awkward tension. Walking side by side with the object of his dreams, he allowed himself to feel the aches and pains from the battle, from keeping him from fidgeting or saying something he regretted. Unlike Pod, the clasped hands behind his back, Sansa couldn't help but fidget. A nervousness had come over her suddenly. The unflappable hand to his majesty was left tongue-tied by the mere presence of another. How ironic! Much as she hated to admit it, it reminded her of how she had been all those years ago, smitten with the dashing blonde Prince Joffrey. The man beside her was nothing like him at all. Perhaps that was the best thing of it all. Sansa cleared her throat. Thank you for walking me to my chambers, Sir Payne. Podrick forced out of his self-created bubble. It was my pleasure, Lady Stark. Lady Stark. Sansa deflated a bit. While she knew how noble he was, and she admired him for it, part of her wished for a bolder familiarity. Soon, though, they were at her door. Looking up at him, she opened it to enter. Bowing slightly, Podrick took Sansa's hand and kissed the back of it. Her hand tingled warmly, but as he moved to leave her, she grabbed onto his hand. Sansa made the decision. Podrick, you may come in. His eyes widened, eyebrow raising questioningly. She nodded, smiling. Slipping inside the room behind the hand to His Majesty, Podrick's heart pounded in anticipation. He closed the door behind him to give them privacy from any wandering guards or nosy servants. But he wasn't prepared for Sansa to pull his tunic towards her and crash her lips on his. The lips melded chastely. Podrick kept keeping his hands on his sides while Sansa gripped onto his shoulders. It lasted for what seemed like hours, but was in reality about a minute before Sansa pulled away. This time she nervously bit her lip, looking at him intently. A positive sign. "My lady." Again with the formality. Frankly, it was now quite irritating, but her happy emotions won out. She rushed over to hug him. "I was so relieved that you survived the battle, Podrick." She released him once more. "That I could ask for forgiveness for what happened the other night." "It isn't a problem, my lady." "It is to me, Podrick." "I understand if you are offended by my advances." "No!" Surprising herself at the level of emotion in her voice, Sansa took a deep breath and continued. "I was more surprised. No person has ever been intimate with me except—" She didn't have to finish that sentence. "That's all I have known, and the memory of it overwhelmed me. I know you would never hurt me." Podrick shook his head. "Of course I wouldn't. I think I am in love with you, Sansa Stark." Sansa felt her heart skip a beat. He loves me." Aside from flowery asides from Joffrey that turned out to be just a sick facade, no man had ever said such words to her. From the earnestness in his eyes, she knew that he meant it. Unable to say the words back, still not knowing what she felt, there was only really one way to say the thing she was certain of. She closed the distance. Sansa wrapped her arms around his neck and brought her lips close to his, hovering close and daring him to close the remaining gap, which he did. The kiss grew passionate, stirring something inside of Podrick he hadn't felt in a while, and that Sansa had never felt once in her life. Her eyes stayed open the entire time, willing her mind and body to know that it was Podrick. Podrick, kind and gentle. Not the sadistic, brutal Ramsay. As such, when his hands roamed, Sansa only mewled into his mouth. Sensing the flickering emotions written across her face, Podrick moved to pull away, only for Sansa's hand to tighten around his neck. "My lady, if you are not ready to." Cut off by a chaste kiss, Sansa looked Podrick in the eye. A small smile formed on her lips. "No, I want this." Able to fight for hours without succumbing to fatigue, Podrick nevertheless felt himself drained by this woman. Kissed by fire. Well, Sansa Stark truly was fire, even if it was her brother with the blood of the dragon. Rolling onto their sides, he grew concerned with her silence. Nuzzling the crown of her head, red locks messy and wild, Podrick tightened his hold on her. "Was it all right for you, Sansa?" Sansa couldn't help but grin softly. She had seen but never truly understood the joy and passion of a relationship. Never truly fathomed what bond Jon and Daenerys, Robb and Margaery, or Arya and Gendry had together. Until now. With her brave knight. Not a strapping blonde, but dashing in his own way. Shifting to look up at him. Really look at him. She cupped his stubbled cheek lovingly. The best. His eyes lit up in happiness. Their lips met in another passionate kiss. A knock on the door disturbed them mid-kiss. Eyes wide, Sansa quickly covered up her nude body while Podrick rolled off the bed and started hiking up his trousers. "Lady Stark?" It was a female voice. It had a saucy accent. "Yes?" Sansa asked, a bit confused. Was it one of Daenerys' Dothraki handmaids? "What is it?" Normally she'd just send a Missandei or Jorah to get her, so Sansa hadn't learnt the various dialects from across the narrow sea. "The Emperor has fallen ill." Podrick donned his shirt, wheeled around in shock as Sansa gasped. "Maesters suspect poison." "I'll be right there." Sansa scrambled out of the bed and threw on her underdress. "Open the door, Podrick." Nodding, Podrick waited until his new lover was fastening her dress before moving to the door. Unlatching it, he pulled it open, only to be greeted by a chained mailed fist to the face. And then blackness. Line break. What about our gods? Danny? However, the little one beside her was causing a far different reaction. John! She pushed herself out of his embrace. Wait. Even drunk, the Honourable Stark within him morphed lust into concern. What's wrong? He cupped his cheeks. Tell me, my love. Nothing that bad. Calm down. She chuckled at his obvious worry for her. It's just that your child is giving me a restless stomach. Thank the gods it was starting again after the battle. Daenerys watched as his concern evaporated, for the most part. She kissed him. I'll be right back. Wait. Dany found herself turning around. John knelt down and kissed her stomach over the dress. I can't wait to see you, child. Sniffling, Dany hurried out of there before her emotions threatened to consume her. Minutes later, the last of the sweets consumed at the feast were disposed of down the latrine tunnel. She felt a little better, enough that a good swill of water would leave her ready for, well, with her husband. Rubbing her abdomen, Dany wistfully pictured the little life inside her, a piece of her and John, one that he would finally get to experience growing within her body. Once they had defeated the dead, one that would grow up into adulthood in peace, without the tumult and the fear that Arya and Rhaegar gnawed at the edges of their lives for years now. Smiling on her lips, Dany tied Saracen back to her waist and opened the door. As the smile formed into shock, which changed to horror in the blink of an eye. Standing in front of her was Dario, clad in a common labourer's breeches and smirking innocently. We meet again, Khaleesi. Dany reacted quickly, hand darting for the hilt of her sword, only for Sir Boros Blout to react far quicker with the black hood in his hands. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Because, whoa boy. One thing I absolutely adore about this was Podrick and Sansa. I know I've said it before that I think they're really sweet, but that he was so willing to be so gentle with her and was going at her pace and was immediately made sure she was okay after they were done. Oh my god. And, of course, Joffrey would have something up his sleeve. Of course. But what can you do? But I did like that Jaime smacked Lancel aside, because Lancel's just... he's bothersome, isn't he? He's a bother. Oh, boy. Dario, again, give that man a whack! Anyway, you guys know the drill by this point. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!